Hi, how are you? My name is Pete, and in this video I'm going to show you my favorite fully optimized Technomancer build for clearing every single expedition on tier 15. So just to show you how well this build performs, these are my times from all the expeditions in the game. And as you can see, this build has no problems clearing every single expedition. In some cases, you can actually clear the expedition in half of the required times. Like in the case of Scorched Lands, as you can see here, my best time is 9:30, whereas the required time for the expedition to get a gold, it's over 23 minutes. Now, before we start, I just want to mention that this build best performs solo. You can do okay when there's 2 of you. However, if there's 3 of you, you might run into the ammo problem. And you don't want ammo problem with blighted rounds because the whole build evolves around blighted rounds. And if you run out of them, you're not gonna have a good time. So let's start with the class setup. So as you can see, you want to pick the top of the tree here. And let me just go over a couple of really important ones. One of them would be exposing toxin, whereas every time toxic is afflicted on an enemy, vulnerable status is inflicted as well. Also marked for execution, where vulnerable afflicted on enemy is 40% more effective, which you want to pick that too. Now the 2 sides of the power, which makes you kind of a glass cannon build. You get 15% more damage, but you also deal 20% more damage. Now the assault master, it's up to you. I'm using the assault rifle, but if you want to use a marksman rifle or sniper rifles, of course you're gonna switch that to Sniper Master. And the most important skill in that tree is Empowering Antenna, which basically gives you 40% damage boost for 10 seconds. But the thing is that you're mainly going to use Blighted Turret to proc that, and the Blighted Turret cooldown on this build is around 6 seconds. So as long as you don't forget to actually throw that turret, you pretty much have 40% of damage boost all the time. Now let's go over the skills. Skills are pretty simple. It's Cold Snap, Blighted Rounds, and Blighted Turret. Now the Cold Snap is mainly used for defense, but it can also be used on offense depending on the map. Now to make this video as short as possible, I will leave the gameplay in the background, where I'm gonna go over all different perks and gear setup that you need to use. So let's start with the gun. It's totally up to you. I prefer the assault rifles because at the moment they are the hardest hitting gun in the game. And of course I'm using the burst variant for that. That has crit damage, status power, and long range damage. Ideally you want to go with crit damage, close range damage, and long range damage, but if you can't get that, just go with what you have. And the 2 perks I'm using on the gun is Bone Shrapnel, which helps me clear out all the little mobs, and of course the Killing Spree, which is the best DPS perk on the gun in the game at the moment. Now for the gear, ideally you're looking for bonus firepower, close range damage, and long range damage. But if you can't get that, you use what you can. So for the headgear, I'm using the legendary piece, which you don't actually need. You can go with the purple one. But I really like the perk that it comes with, the splash boost, that increases the splash effect radius of successfully shots by 50% for your blighted rounds, which is actually really good. Like every time you see me shooting something, and if you see the damage popping on the other mobs beside it, that's that perk doing it. And for the second perk, I go with the Sharp Eye, that killing enemies while aiming down sights grants you 16,000 firepower for 20 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times, which is probably the strongest DPS perk on the gear that you can put. Now for the chest piece, I got lucky. I got the God Roll of bonus firepower, close range damage, and long range damage. And I'd go with Toxic Lead, which basically allows me to refill my ammo every time I kill someone affected by the toxic, which is the must-have because this whole build evolves around blighted rounds, and you never want to lose the blighted rounds. And for the second perk, I have Emergency Stance, which gives you a golem effect once your health drops to 30%, which is booked at the moment, and once it's procced once, it will just stay on you. However, if they're gonna fix it, I would recommend something like Mitigation from Death or Damage Absorber. Now for the pants, again, I have a God Roll, firepower, long range damage, close range damage, and I'm using the Captain Hunter perk, which actually is really strong. Like this build is so strong that you're pretty much gonna 1 burst or 2 burst everything else. The only things that you might have some problems with will be elites, and that perks help with that massively, giving you additional 25% of damage against elites. And for the second perk, I'm using Bloodlust, which works pretty much the same way as Sharp Eye. It gives you a firepower after killing enemies, and it stacks up to 3 times. It just lasts a little bit shorter than the Sharp Eye. Now for the gloves, using again firepower, long range damage, close range damage. And for the first perk, I'm using Radical Therapy, which gives you additional 15% damage against enemies affected by toxic. But because I'm using blighted rounds, of course, that applies to every single enemy you're shooting at. And for the second perk, I'm using Dum Dum Bullets, which basically increase assault weapon damage by 10%. And for the boots, again, God Roll, firepower, close range damage, long range damage. And I'm using the Critical Analysis, which increases my critical damage by 15%, as well as Euthanizer, which increases the damage against enemies affected by toxic by additional 25%. And they actually do stack with each other. Radical Therapy gives you 15%, and Euthanizer gives you another 25% on top of it. Now, if you don't know how to get all them God Roll gear pieces, I made a video about it. I'll link it down in the description in case you want to check it out. Now for the secondary weapon and your handgun, it doesn't really matter. Just put anything you want as long as it's your maximum level. Now here's the summary of the build. I will link it down in the description so you can just download the screenshot, and it's going to be easier for you to see everything in one place other than scrolling through the video every single time you want to come back to it. I hope you find this video useful. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.